Champions Cup draw announced. Everyone hoo-ha. Bulls have got the easier draw, Storm has got the harder draw. Doesn't really matter. We're not going to go past the top 8.
No, we are not. South African teams dead in the water. If you look at the teams they'll be faced with in the pools, the Champions Cup pools, it's a mess. I think if anything, it's actually a good thing for the South African teams because it's giving them this clarity to just focus on the URC because you're not going to get any joy in the Champions Cup. It was always going to be a long shot anyway, travelling to France and playing tough teams abroad. But when you're drawn with teams like La Rochelle, as the Stormers are, you're in hot water there. So, like I said before, send Jimmy Two Guns and the Pumas over to play their away matches, mate, and Stormers concentrate on the URC.
Yeah, I think the big thing there is URC, especially post the World Cup, and then look at 24-25 as the year you want to attack the Champions Cup and try and get a home quarterfinal.
Right.
And from there, anything can happen because the final is on neutral venue.
And I mean, we've had the salary cap increase significantly in 1 year, so in the next couple of years, we may be at a place where you have the finances to actually warrant having bigger squads. But at the moment, as it stands, you can't.
Still be great to have the likes of La Rochelle, Leicester Tigers, Sale or Star. We don't know which one of which two of the four in Cape Town.
Coming back
Two of those games will be here in December and also in January, and that's going to be fantastic.
Yes.
Just to have those teams play here in terms of variety, and that's what I love about playing in the North. There was no variety in Super Rugby.
Yeah.
You knew you got the Crusaders, Chiefs, and the Brumbies 1 year. The next year you got the other three. Next year you got the other three. It's same old. So love the draw. Love the way they did the draw. They really tried to make it a bit like the Champions League.
Zhuzh it up a bit.
Quite.
Yeah.
But and nice to see the Stormers. You know, Dobber's big thing is his 5-year plan is that they sit at the top of World Club Rugby's table of 4 and consistently at the top of 2, and their big mission is to chase Leinster next year. And I think he's timed it well because there will be a drop-off post the World Cup for those Irish players.
Definitely.
That are dominated by Leinster. But that draw announced, if you haven't seen it, the details of it, you go to SA Rugby magazine, everything is there. It's a strange kind of draw because there's 6 teams, Leinster and the Stormers are in the same pool, but because they play together in the URC, they don't play each other. And then the top 4 teams go through from each pool, and I think a best place, 5th place playoff.
Right.
So I think what you're looking at best there is the Bulls and the Stormers making that top 4, but having to go away to play a last 16 game. And if they get through that away to play a last 8 game, if they get through that away to play a semi-final, and if they get through that, my God, they've deserved to be in the final. So it's going to be a hell of a tough. URC is where our focus has to be.
Yes.
We've got a Currie Cup final this weekend. Ron Pino will turn 40 next year. He's going to lead the Cheetahs out. What I've taken from this Currie Cup, Zels, and I just want your view on that, is forget playing the URC and the Champions Cup players in the Currie Cup. Integrate them back from injury if you have to, but let those youngsters play that tournament. We've seen every team, by and large the Bulls, try and play in all 3 tournaments with the same players, and they've taken a beating this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think we have to treat it like the Vodacom Cup was treated in years gone by, where it basically became a junior sort of under 25, under 23 tournaments. And that's where you give your youngsters an opportunity to cut their teeth at the senior professional level. And I think if anything, the URC guys coming back to play in the Currie Cup and getting smashed by players that are not on the URC radar just goes to show these guys have played what feels like 2 seasons uninterrupted. And they need a break. And
well, they have played 2 seasons uninterrupted. And
there we go.
For our Springboks, they're going to be playing effectively 2.5 seasons uninterrupted.
It's crazy.
That whole conversion from south to north
Yeah.
meant there was no preseason for our players.
Yeah.
And it's not making an excuse at all. It's just stating the obvious.
Reality.
And stating the fact that post this World Cup will be the first time that the core of those Springboks will actually get an off season.
Yeah.
Now is the first time that the URC players will get a type of off season. All Jimmy Steinhaus wants is a game.
It's a game.
He just gets an off
He's got the
7
opposite
months
problem.
of it, okay? But great that it's the Pumas against defending their title.
Yes.
Against, the Cheetahs. It was the semi-final last year, and then the Pumas stunned them in Bloemfontein.
Correct.
I wrote a piece on Keo.co.za that if there's a World Cup crisis at 9/10, I wouldn't look further than picking Rompina. 39, he turns 40th on the 10th of March, 400 plus games, 2,000 plus points, 22 points in the semi-final. Everyone's laughing again. November 2020, I wrote, Morne Steyn is starting to roar again. Pick him in the extended squad for the Lions series. People thought I was a fool, a lunatic. They said, bring back Donnie Craven next. And when he kicked that winning penalty in the 79th minute, people were like, Morné Steyn was always a natural choice. Rumpino, I'm not saying pick him ahead of the 5 that are there at the moment, but we do have something special in a player like that. If there is a crisis, and as the owner of the Sharks, Marco Mazzotti, asked the other day on Twitter, will he be our Beaver moment? I don't know if he does whitebait fishing, but I think he does a bit of farming. We can bring him out from Bloemfontein and he can land in Paris, head to the Stade and just do the business.
Yeah, look, I think it's a travesty that Morné Steyn spent most of his last 2 seasons on ice. For me, he should have been above Chris Smith and Johan Cruyff at the Bulls. I'm disappointed that he decided to leave the box when he did. He adds massive value. And for a country that's built their entire rugby legacy on crushing Oaks up front and then kicking your points, we seem to have forgotten that you need goal kickers in big games, especially at World Cups. Ron Pienaar can kick points. I think last year the Boks were messing around with Steven Kitsoff taking kicks at goal. So how is this guy not in the frame given the injury crisis at the moment? He's a guy we'd definitely look at.
It wasn't Kitsy, it was Cheslin Colby.
Sorry, close
and
enough.
And Faf de Klerk, okay? And they did particularly well. They kicked at 65% and didn't actually have to rely on kicks. We lost the one game, won the other one, and there was magnificent interplay between a guy called Mani Lebok and Damien Willems at Twickenham. That 1-2 interplay, score twice.
Yes, I remember.
All right.
Great
so
time.
forget the Champions Cup for now. We'll continue to chat about that.
Forget it like the Stormers have forgotten it.
Exactly. They saw that draw and just thought two big home games, big crowds, and a lovely December, January, and then forget about that till May next year when they play the final. Tomorrow we'll be chatting a bit about the Under-20 World Cup that starts in Cape Town next week.
Yes.
But international rugby, from the end of the month, it's full on. It's the Rugby Championship in July, shortened version, 3 matches each. A couple of friendlies. We play an extra one against Argentina. The Kiwis and Aussies obviously play for the Bledisloe. One goes across the ditch. It's only 2 that they'll play though, so Australia's got to win both to win that. And then it's warm-up matches all over Europe, and then the big 7 weeks at the World Cup in France. It's going to be a rip. It's going to be, for me, probably the best World Cup that there's been. If you just see the success of the French teams and how they've been embraced, the top 14 winners, Toulouse, La Rochelle Champions Cup winners, Toulon Challenge Cup winners, the receptions they got back in their hometowns. Now, if that's the preamble to what we're going to expect at a World Cup, it's going to be sensational. So buckle up. Zels will be giving away 2 tickets to go to the World Cup final in France.
To watch it at the Dross.
At the Dross in Stellenbosch. But Eddie Jones speaking a massive game already. I love having Eddie Jones back on the scene.
Yeah, it's fantastic having Eddie back in the Southern Hemisphere. It's exactly what Australian rugby needs. Somebody with a bit of character, more character than a chair, and it's fabulous to have him just shooting from the hip and saying what he thinks, man. And he's ruffled some feathers over there. And one thing you know is he's a guy who can back up his talk. I mean, Eddie Jones will have a plan. And he'll have a plan to win that World Cup, and he's in a very favourable side of the draw there, so it's going to be interesting.
Well, as he said, there shouldn't be expectation. They've won 38% of their games over the last 4 years.
He said the Super Rugby teams, the best one has won 50% of their matches, the rest are 40%.
Exactly, and they haven't even won 50% because they played
each other
for
That's
most
their
of
wins.
the season, okay? But he's talking about a smash and grab job.
Oh, I love that,
Kitch
mate.
Christie had the ambulance job. Eddie's talking about sneaking in, smashing, grabbing, leaving with the Rugby Championship, the Bledisloe, and the World Cup.
Oh, mate. One country that'll be prepped for smash and grab is South Africa, mate. We got that coating.
I reckon the Bledisloe is a possibility. The
Yes.
World Cup definitely because of the draw.
But not happening at Loftus Versfeld, mate.
If he's planning on a winning start in Pretoria, I've seen some brilliant Australian teams, World Cup winning teams, come to South Africa and get beaten by some pretty average Springbok sides.
Yeah, spot on. It's a bit like the Gold Coast effect on the Springboks.
Yeah, I've seen some great box sides go there and take 20, 30 points against some pretty shit Aussie sides.
Yeah. No, the Wallabies are not going to win the opener, but like I say, bank on Eddie to have a plan. The Bledisloe Cup will be something he targets. He's come out and said it. It's maths, mate. The odds just don't make sense that they haven't won it for as long as they haven't, and they'll be back.
So Eddie back on the scene. They in camp. The Boks are in camp. We've great news that Siya Khaleesi is training. He's on track. But the big story at the moment is Jean Klein and Athia Snyman.
Yeah.
The Munster duo, the South African born and raised Munster duo, they came to Cape Town and absolutely made a statement in Munster's victory against the Stormers.
Yes, they did.
Klein was strong, and Athia Snyman, when he came on and played the last hour, he just owned. He was so reminiscent of a youthful Victor Matfield in how he just owned the line out, and he brings that extra grunt and physicality. Great to have those two in the mix. When you look at the depth with an Ebenstall to come back, a Lewis Miller there, a Peter Steff that can play there.
Yeah.
You've got to say Marvin Ory's way down the pecking order when you look at the caliber of those locks.
Definitely.
But Klein, you think Ireland are going to think, shit, should we let him go?
But the fact that we're even asking that question means the objective has been reached. Like, that's exactly the point, is you bring this guy in, the mind games have started. It's World Cup year. This thing is about to kick off. So I think it's great they brought him in. I think Jean Klein is a guy who did well here when he was with Province, and obviously has done well at Ireland. And I think he definitely adds value. He's the real deal. He can play. He's physical. He fits the mold of a classic Springbok lock. I don't know whether he's going to make it to the World Cup, but I wouldn't be upset to see him there.
Well, I mean, he played in the World Cup for Ireland in 2019. He does give these Boks an into the whole Irish system.
Yeah.
A masterstroke from Rassie and Ninabe, and I think Ireland may have missed a trick there by not keeping him close to the kraal.
Yeah.
42 players, he was excluded from that, and he has been informed. So, well done there. I think an early victory for Ninabe and Rassie to get him in. As we said, great news coming out. We see Sia training so hard. They think that he'll probably get a game in before the World Cup. The key is he battle hardened by the time the World Cup comes. He's just got to be ready from the quarterfinal onwards. I look back at Eddie's comments and he said they're going hell for leather for the Rugby Championship, because then there's nothing in between.
It's a 1,200 meter sprint, mate.
He said nothing in between till the quarterfinal.
What is that? What mate? Gatlin came out and said it himself. I wish I didn't take the Wales job.
He's saying who cares about their pool that they're in, that they definitely guaranteed a 1-2 position.
But he takes over this team that he admits hasn't won anything for a very long time, and straight off he's talking like they're about to become world champions. I mean, you've got to love that about the guy. It's brilliant.
I do. And then across the ditch, you've got a guy who knows they're not going to be world champions. They've announced their squad, the All Blacks 36.
Yes.
Incredible talent in the backline. We've seen that in Super Rugby Pacific again this season. But where are the forwards?
Yeah, it sounds like we're talking about Fiji or Samoa, right? Great backs. Where's the pack? I mean, the options up front, especially the tight five. Outside of that hooker that we love, who else?
Two good young props that have come in. And they've got Ardie Savea, who's a fantastic player. But Ardie Savea, for me, would never make a McCaw, Jerome Kiner, Kieran Reid.
Never.
Lustria, he would come off the bench.
Yep.
And that's their go-to guy. He did play fullback for his club on Saturday, scored a try, had a few good runs.
Glad his mind's on the World Cup.
So nice to see him get a run there. But I looked at, Sam Whitelock, I thought was finished in 2015.
And he was. He's just hanging around.
He's like the new Alan Wynne Jones.
Exactly.
He just won't go away.
Exactly.
It's 2023 and they're banking on him to do it, okay?
Yeah.
Brodie Retallick, best player in the world at one stage, has never quite been the same, suffered a lot of injuries, went to Japan, not quite reached the same heights. When you pick in a bloke like Bird as one of your locks.
Right. Or Scotty Barrett, he's next in line, right?
Geez. So I looked again at their second rows and then obviously their back five composition.
Yes.
And we keep on saying it. Jason Ryan did some very special things with those All Black forwards a latter part of last year.
Yes.
But they fell apart at Twickenham. And that's the overriding memory for me, is they were 25-6 up, 9 minutes to play, and they were hanging on for a 25-all draw against a team we smashed the next week.
100%.
So
doesn't that add great spice to this World Cup, though, in the sense you've got this All Blacks team coming in without the favourites tag. They're not the guaranteed team to win this thing. They haven't been rolling over teams for 2 years. It's gonna be an interesting tournament.
It's beautiful. It's nice to have like law and order restored in terms of how a big tournament should be.
Correct.
I think we're coming good. There was enough last year to show us that we're there and thereabouts.
Yeah.
We just don't need one or two players to go down, which brings me back to the 10 position, okay? Alton Yankees has been drafted in because Pollard's not going to play in the opener. Damien Williams is struggling a bit. Marnie Leboc's there. And Alton, fourth cab off the rank. Welcome back with open arms. 47 tests over 13 years. Raving about him. Said he's been there. So has Jesse Krill been there for 10 years. Would I pick them to play in a World Cup final? No, not comfortably.
Yeah.
Explain the rationale in bringing him back at the moment.
Yeah, I've never really understood the Alton Yankees selection because he doesn't really fit the mold of a classic Bok 10 in some ways. But I mean, he's had some off-field issues, which I think we all hoping are behind him. We're rooting for him to come back to the field and get back to his best. And we want the Boks to win the World Cup, so we're obviously rooting for Alton to do well if and when he gets a chance. it's frustrating for me to see that we're in a position where we have to look to Alton in an emergency situation. We haven't created the depth that we need at 10 to be looking at other guys. For me, obviously, Damien Willemse is a guy I think should have got a lot more opportunities since 2018. And then Moni Lebok is a guy on the back of URC form who will potentially get his shot now during the Rugby Championship to show what he can do, and let's hope he takes it with both hands.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to just how poor the Bulls were. That Gerson, Chris Smith, who played all season primarily, not even featuring, especially Gerson. So much faith was put in. Was it a case of so much faith being put in a schoolboy prodigy, a 21-year-old who was going to conquer the world? And now he's close to 30 and he hasn't conquered that world.
Yeah, I think, Gerson kept on sort of giving hints that maybe his heart wasn't in rugby and people just refused to believe him. And I think it kind of played out. You kind of saw a guy who apparently is mercurially talented and is a fantastic player, but he doesn't deliver because I don't think his head or his heart is really in it. And so for me, it was very surprising that Morné Steyn didn't get more of a shout with the Bulls, that they invested so much time in Johan Gerson. I know he was beset with injuries and he's had his own issues, but the delivery was never there. The potential we heard about, the actual, I didn't see it.
And that's why I keep on going back to this obsession with age. And there's always that mantra, like when you trumpeting a 19-year-old who believes in red hot form and should play. Okay, Moody, for example, last year.
Yeah.
And it's like, young enough is good enough. Good enough is young enough. Why don't we have that with older players? Like, good enough is old enough. Or young enough.
Spot on.
It's like 39, 40, 36. Whoa, should we pick him?
Yeah.
No, let's go and pick a 26-year-old who hasn't got half the talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I keep on going back to having someone like a Rompino in the mix. As absurd as it may sound now, why don't you use that person to the max, even in a group setup? And give yourself that kind of insurance policy, as opposed to going with someone because they fifth in the country, but they should never even be fifth in the country.
No, absolutely. And I think with, we talked about age with Sam Whitelock because you can see the guy is not getting around the field like a spring chicken anymore. Whereas with Ruan Pienaar, he is the leading player at the Cheetahs. They are in the Currie Cup final. One thing Ruan Pienaar can do is split the uprights. We've spoken about the importance and the value of a goal kick. It's surprising to me in South African rugby that we don't see the value in this guy who can split the uprights anytime he wants to. We've made some crazy calls in the past couple of seasons. We've had to trial Faf de Klerk as our goal kicker, Cheslin Colby as our goal kicker. I don't even know, apparently Stephen Kitsoff was in the mix. I just think it's crazy we're not looking at this. This is a guy who has a legacy of goal kicking. He's very experienced, very versatile player, still in good nick. And we seem to be turning to other options that maybe the flaws are more obvious to me. So Ruan Pienaar to the box at this stage would seem a bit desperate and a bit of an emergency call. But that's kind of the position we're in. You have to consider things like that.
I know, look, there's going to be a lot of rugby played as well between now and that opening match of the World Cup. We've got the Rugby Championship, we've got 3 or 4 other friendlies. 7 matches down the line, you may find 5 or 6 players don't make it to the World Cup because of injury. It's a contact sport. I know people don't want to make it a contact sport anymore, but it is a contact sport. Injuries are always going to be a part of it. I'm just saying to the South African public as well, kind of open your eyes and acknowledge brilliance when it's there, acknowledge longevity. Ruan Pienaar made his debut in the Currie Cup in 2004. He plays on Saturday as the main man for the Cheetahs, and next year, 2024, 20 years later, some of the kids playing weren't born when he made his debut. That's how well he's done, and wherever he's gone, he's been a success. So we always kind of acknowledge the good and the great ones once they're gone. Let's acknowledge them while they're here.
I mean, mate, if Frans Steyn's knees weren't buggered, he'd be going to the World Cup.
Exactly.
Irrelevant of his age.
And I tell you now, if Morné Steyn hadn't decided, well, you know what, clearly no one wants me anymore. That's why he went to Australia and sat in the stands for 6 weeks.
Correct.
And decided that's the end for international rugby.
Yeah.
He's been sitting in the stands for the Bulls most of the season. I would still pick Morné Steyn in an extended Springbok squad.
Definitely.
And I'd pick Ruan Pienaar in terms of a training squad of 40. They just bring such composure and they bring such experience, and they've done it before time and again.
Yeah, they've lived the big moments. They haven't just talked about them, they've walked them. Absolutely.
All right, big stories on SA Rugby Magazine this week. The biggest one?
Pienaar's been up there. We've got Antoine Dupont surfing on the top 14 trophy in the sea, which is quite interesting. And yeah, so like I say, Ruan Pienaar sticking around for another season at the Cheetahs has been pretty prominent. A lot of chat around him. Inspired a lot of debate.
Yeah, and the Frenchies, I mean, just so much success in Europe, and obviously the top 14 is a special final. Dylan Late's Raymond Rule. Dylan Late's been outstanding all season.
Very much
But
so.
one tackle away from winning the double. Unfortunately, he did miss it.
Yeah.
But a great season for
Fantastic.
Dylan Lates. And Raymond Rule has also really found a home at La Rochelle. Eh?
Yeah, no, and that's a great success story, one we should celebrate. Hopefully we see both of them back at Cape Town Stadium to play the Stormers.
Yeah, playing against Storms, I wouldn't mind seeing Dylan Lates back at the Stormers
Oh, mate.
in the foreseeable future.
Dreams can come true.
All right, just before we wrap today's one up, because we're not going to talk Curry Cup tomorrow, we're going to talk World Cup under 20s.
Okay.
Cheetahs, Pumas, you going 2 guns, you going Pinot?
I'm going with 2 guns, man. I love the underdogs. They did it last season. They're going to do it again. I'm backing the Pumas to ambush the Cheetahs again. 5 points.
5 points. I got Ron Pinot to be sensational, to have his kicking boots on and to really deflate Jimmy's big arms. 15 points to the Cheetahs at home
Glorious.
and a Curry Cup victory.